I thought I was giving up a night under the stars. Turns out I was making room for a sunrise I'd never live to see without him. My name is Calder Wynn. 13 years ago, I handed my reserved night at Kestrel Ridge Observatory to a stranger with calloused hands and shy eyes. His name was Rowan Ivers. Facility maintenance by day, sky chaser by the scraps of any night left over. It was supposed to be my night. A memorial slot I'd waited 9 months for. The one I'd promised myself on the first anniversary of my father's passing. Dad used to unscrew a brass eyepiece cap with a small crescent dent and say, "Listen, the night has its own heartbeat." That cap lived in my pocket like a coin of faith. I met Rowan at the check-in desk, struggling with a form and an apology. "I'm on the standby list," he said to no one in particular. "But the forecast, tonight might be the meteor stream's edge." He had a paper wristband from a previous public night, still on his wrist like he'd kept a door open for himself. The clerk shook her head. "Fully booked, no exceptions." I could have stared at my own name on the ledger and looked away from his. I could have told myself grief outranks kindness. Instead, I heard Dad's voice in the dented cap and my own voice say, "Put him under the dome. I'll give him my hours." The clerk blinked. Rowan blinked twice. "Why?" he asked. "Because," I said, pressing the eyepiece cap into his palm for a second. "You're listening harder than I am tonight." It wasn't spare generosity. It cost the last thing I had planned with my father that still felt like ours. But the hinge of the night clicked, and the dome opened like an eyelid. I didn't leave. I brewed coffee, carried cables, and, because gifts should come with guidance, I taught him to collimate by breath and not by panic. We took turns at the finder, counting pitch between stars the way a carpenter measures by finger joints. At 2:13 a.m., clouds rolled like a rumor. At 2:41, the sky cleared its throat. At 3:09, Rowan found something that wasn't on the plan. A smudge that moved wrong, just a whisper against the black. "It's probably noise," he said. "Noise doesn't repeat the same mistake," I answered. We marked coordinates in pencil, both of us shaking with caffeine and the ridiculous hope that keeps fools and discoverers up past sense. The night ended without trumpet or confirmation. He tore off his paper wristband, stamped with a little indigo comet, and tucked it into his wallet as if it were a passport. He tried to give me back the observatory time somehow, as if that were how clocks worked. "Pay me forward," I said. "Write the observation notes clean. If it's nothing, we learn. If it's something..." He nodded, the kind of nod that hangs in the air long after the person has gone. Discovery doesn't arrive like applause. It arrives like chores. Rowan sent me the first reduction. Messy, earnest, wrong in 3 different ways. I sent it back with bruised kindness and red ink. He learned to subtract bias like it owed him money. He reran stacks. He overcorrected. He undercorrected. Night slipped past, and so did more clouds than any fair sky should hide behind. He worked 2 jobs, mopping hallways and fixing the same door that always stuck on the 2nd floor. He borrowed a laptop so old the spacebar squeaked. He emailed me at 0312, 0347, 0409, attaching FITS files as if they were love letters to a patient universe. I answered during lunch breaks, between meetings at a day job that had nothing to do with stars and too much to do with spreadsheets. My flaw? Envy in a soft coat. There were hours I resented the way his hunger sharpened the sky, the way mine had dulled under bills and quiet grief. There were nights I hated that I had given away something I couldn't get back. And there were mornings I knew that the only way Dad's voice kept speaking was if I let someone else answer. Rowan failed cleanly and often. Rejected time requests. A weather balloon report that lied with optimism. A university lab that said, "We don't mentor maintenance staff." He took an astronomy course at the community college and sat in the back, nearest the door, so he could leave for the night shift without making the professor swallow a sigh. He kept the paper wristband in his wallet, the indigo comet dented and fading, and he rubbed it with his thumb when math got mean. When the smudge returned, fainter but obedient to a path that didn't belong to any catalog, he cried, not cinematic tears, just eyes that didn't blink for a long, steady time. "Don't name it," I told him. "Not yet. Let it keep earning its name." We turned the smudge into numbers, then the numbers into a curve, then the curve into a whisper in the right email inboxes. Most ignored us. One didn't. A postdoc with a generous patience got us a sliver of time on a smaller scope that didn't feel small at 4 a.m. That night, Rowan wore the brass eyepiece cap on a cord around his neck like a ridiculous medal. "Borrowed," he said. "Stolen," I corrected, smiling. The confirmation didn't come fast. It came in pieces, like a photograph developing in a tray you're not allowed to touch. An orbit solved to the kind of error that makes professionals shrug and say, "It's holding." A designation that looked like a phone number. A provisional name that tasted like cardboard. Then, months later, after we had both almost decided to store the dream in a drawer and pretend we liked how quiet drawers are, Rowan's phone lit up with a note from a committee made of acronyms. Comet recognized. We didn't throw confetti. We fixed the door on the second floor because it was still sticking. Then we bought sandwiches and ate them on the steps outside, laughing like people who don't know how to celebrate on cue. He asked if I wanted my name on the paper. I said no. Not because I was saintly. Because the truest part of my gift was letting the sky call out the one who had stayed awake to answer. He called it Comet Ivers. I called my mother and told her I would finally sleep. Time did what time does. Rowan chased graduate programs and grants and slept less than is healthy for any human. He moved west. We wrote less. I kept the door of our shared memory propped open with emails about maintenance schedules and tiny victories. Kids at the community college who gasped when he put Saturn in the eyepiece. A prison outreach night where men with hard faces softened at the sight of a crescent moon. He kept the wristband tucked behind his ID. I kept the eyepiece cap in a drawer I opened on lonely evenings just to hear the old heartbeat of brass. And then, the world did a louder thing. A journalist wrote about the maintenance worker who became a comet discoverer. About the clerk who almost turned him away. About a quiet night at Kestrel Ridge paid for by a stranger's grief and a brass cap. The story went where stories go now, everywhere and nowhere. A philanthropist who loved the way dust becomes drama in a tale offered seed money. A senator whose mother taught math in a trailer added momentum. Pledges gathered like meteors wanting a sky. They called it the Aphelion Fund, a national STEM grant for overlooked students and overlooked schools, for night janitors who dream in equations, for anyone who keeps a paper wristband from a public night because it felt like a promise. Rowan asked me to come to the launch. The small knot came dressed as logistics. At the museum auditorium, the security guard scanned my phone and frowned. "Your QR codes for next week's rehearsal." I had read the email wrong. 13 years of patience, and I tripped on 7 days. "Wait," I asked, suddenly certain that fate was only a story we tell so we can forgive ourselves. "I'm not trying to crash anything. I'm just here to sit in the back and listen." He looked at my hands. I didn't know I was clutching the brass eyepiece cap. "Hang on," he said, walking away in that slow, official way that suggests either help or a polite escort to the sidewalk. Minutes layered like dust. Then a woman with a program headset pushed through the door. "Mr. Wynn?" she asked. "Yes," I said, ready to apologize. Rowan said if a man showed up carrying a small metal memory, we should let him in. Backstage smelled like warm cables and hope. Rowan stood by a model of his comet's orbit, thinner than I remembered. Older in the way a map is older when you finally draw the roads you've traveled. He turned, blinked once, and then not at all. "Calder," he said. He didn't run to hug me. We don't do that. He reached for the eyepiece cap and stopped his hand an inch away, like a priest hesitating over a relic. "You kept it." "It kept me," I said. He laughed, then grew quiet, the way the dome grows quiet just before the shutter slips. He looked at my face like he was counting new coordinates, making sure the old ones were still true. "I almost didn't put you on the guest list," he admitted. "Not because I forgot, because I didn't know if you'd want to be found." "I wasn't sure either," I said, honest as a winter sky. We stood a moment in that good, strong silence. The same 90 seconds I had taught him to take at the eyepiece. Breathe, align, confirm. Curtains, lights. A stage manager waved, and Rowan walked into the future. He spoke without theater. He told the room about doors that stick and math that doesn't. He held up a paper wristband with a faded indigo comet and said, "This was my first ticket to enough sky." He told a story that had my name in it once, early and small, then moved on to the hundreds of names that mattered now. They unveiled the Aphelion Fund seal, a tiny drawing of a brass eyepiece cap with a crescent dent, not labeled, not explained, just there, like a heartbeat hiding in a logo. The senator spoke. A teacher cried in a way that made nobody uncomfortable. A girl in the second row gripped a foam rocket like it might suddenly wake and choose a direction. When it ended, I didn't try to go on stage. I walked to the public terrace where the city lights breathed too loudly and waited for the night to show me what it could. Pollution and all. Footsteps. Rowan. No cameras now. Just us and the ordinary air we always shared. He placed the wristband in my palm. "Keep it," he said, "until I forget why I started. Then give it back." I set the eyepiece cap beside it. "We can trade on anniversaries," I said. We didn't sermonize. We didn't summarize. We leaned on the railing. Two men who had learned to measure a life not by titles or headlines, but by how many strangers get to keep their own night. Somewhere above the brown glow, the comet he found was circling for a century-later return none of us would see. The city hummed. The logo's little crescent dent gleamed on the banner behind the glass. And the dome of the museum, on a timer nobody noticed, opened like an eyelid, letting a slice of true darkness in.